My son texted me on the morning of Thanksgiving. Not called. Texted. Hey, Dad. Just so you know, we're doing dinner at Melissa's parents' place this year. It's kind of a their side-only thing. You know how it is. I read it twice. Then I set my phone face down on the kitchen counter and finished my coffee. You know how it is. I knew exactly how it was. I'd been knowing how it was for about 3 years now, ever since my son married Melissa. And slowly, quietly, the way water finds its way under a door, I had gone from being his father to being a scheduling conflict. It wasn't dramatic. That's the thing nobody tells you. You expect the big fight, the raised voices, the moment where someone says the thing that can't be unsaid. But it's never like that. It's cancellations that come with just enough notice to seem polite. It's holiday plans that get mentioned after they've already been made. It's the feeling of being informed rather than included. I'm 64 years old. I worked 31 years with the city of Edmonton, mostly in infrastructure planning. I coached minor hockey for 11 seasons. I built a deck in my backyard by myself over 2 summers. I am not, by any measure, a man who needs to be handled. But that's what it had started to feel like. Being handled. My wife Sandra passed 4 years ago. Breast cancer, caught late. Gone in 14 months. After that, my son was present in the way people are present when they feel obligated to be. He called on the anniversary. He remembered my birthday, usually. He invited me to things occasionally, and when I showed up, I could feel that particular energy in the room. The energy of someone being a good person, rather than actually wanting you there. I don't blame him entirely. Melissa is not a bad woman. She is organized, efficient, and absolutely committed to her own family's traditions. Her parents are down in Lethbridge. Her sister lives in Calgary, 40 minutes from where my son and she bought their house. Her world is tight and functional, and there isn't a lot of slack in it for a widower father-in-law who doesn't quite fit the blueprint. I understood all of that. I just didn't think understanding it meant I had to be grateful for it. So when his text came that Thursday morning, it's kind of a their side only thing. I finished my coffee, rinsed my mug, and decided I was done rearranging myself to fit into spaces that hadn't been made for me. I called my neighbor Frank. He's 68, retired from CN Rail, lost his wife 2 years before I lost Sandra. We'd been doing what I can only describe as cautiously becoming friends. The kind of friendship that happens between men our age, which is mostly sitting in each other's garages and not talking about anything important, until suddenly you are. You doing anything today? I asked. Was going to watch the game, he said. I've got a 22-pound turkey I was saving. There was a pause. I'll bring the beer, he said. I also called my daughter, who lives out in Sherwood Park with her husband, and my 2 grandkids. She's the quieter one, always has been. She'd already heard about Thanksgiving plans from her brother. Apparently the whole thing had been settled weeks ago, and somehow I was the last to know. When I told her I was cooking anyway and she was welcome, she said she'd be there by 2. She didn't make it a big thing. She just said yes, and that was enough. There were 4 of us at my table that afternoon. Frank, my daughter, her husband, who is the kind of man who will fix anything in your house without being asked and never expects anything for it, and their youngest, my grandson, who is 7 years old and spent most of dinner telling me about a book he was reading about the Canadian Rockies. It was a good meal. The turkey was properly done. Frank made a joke about the gravy that I won't repeat here. We ate until we were unreasonable about it. And afterward, the kids sat in the living room while the adults had tea, and nobody mentioned the elephant in the room until Frank did. Because Frank doesn't believe in elephants in rooms. So your son's at the in-laws, he said. He is. Their choice. Their choice. Frank nodded and drank his tea and said, well, their loss, and that was the end of that. Later that evening, my daughter helped me with the dishes, and at some point she said, Dad, you seem good. I thought about it. I am good, I said. And I meant it. My grandson had fallen asleep on the couch with my old dog, a 14-year-old shepherd mix named Cecil. I took a photo. The boy on one end, Cecil on the other, and somewhere between them a whole afternoon of the right kind of ordinary. I posted it on Facebook, the way I sometimes do. Nothing dramatic. Just the photo and good Thanksgiving and a small orange leaf emoji my daughter showed me how to use. I went to bed that night without having looked at my phone again. I should have expected what happened next. Looking back, I don't know why I didn't. But I suppose when you've spent 3 years being quietly overlooked, you stop expecting to matter enough to cause a reaction. My phone started going at 9:30 the next morning. First, it was a text from my son. "Hey, saw your post. Looks like a nice evening." Casual. The kind of casual that takes effort. I replied, "It was. Good turkey." Then nothing for about 20 minutes. Then, "Who's the guy in the background?" I had to think about what photo he was talking about. In the one I'd posted, you could see the edge of the dining room, and if you looked, Frank at the table with a cup of tea. I hadn't thought anything of it. "That's Frank. My neighbor." "Oh. I didn't know you were having people over." I looked at that message for a long moment. I thought about the ways I could respond. I thought about how tired I was of calibrating what I said to manage other people's comfort. I wasn't aware I needed to clear my guest list. I typed and sent it before I changed my mind. He called 4 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I let that go too. Then a text. "Dad, come on. Can you just pick up?" I put my phone in my jacket pocket and took Cecil for a walk. We went down along the ravine path, the one Sandra used to love in the fall because the aspens go gold, and it looks like something out of a painting. It was cold that morning, properly cold, the kind that gets into the back of your throat. Cecil is old and slow now, and we take our time. I didn't look at my phone for an hour. By the time I got back, there were 6 missed calls. 4 from my son, 2 from a number I didn't immediately recognize and then did. It was Melissa. There was also a voicemail, which I listened to standing in my kitchen with my jacket still on. It was my son, and he did not sound casual anymore. "Dad, I want to understand what's going on. Who is this, Frank? How long have you been... is this something serious? Because I feel like I'm hearing about a whole part of your life that I didn't know about, and I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that. And I just think we should talk, okay? Call me back." I stood there for a minute. Then I took off my jacket, hung it by the door, and thought about what he'd just said. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that. There it was. The thing underneath everything. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about how this reflected on his own understanding of his own life. The version where his father was quiet and available and waiting, and now that version had a neighbor named Frank in it. And it didn't compute. I made myself lunch. A grilled cheese and some leftover turkey sliced thin. I sat at the kitchen table and ate it and watched Cecil sleep on his bed in the corner. Then I called my son back. He picked up immediately. "Dad." "Hey, thanks for calling." "You called 6 times, I said. 7 if you count Melissa." A pause. A pause. She was just worried. "About what, specifically?" Another pause, longer. "About you." "About... Look, we didn't know you were having people over. We didn't know you'd met someone." "I haven't met someone," I said. "Frank is my neighbor. He's 68 years old. He used to work for CN Rail. He brought beer and we ate turkey and watched the game. That's the whole story." "Okay." He sounded relieved, which annoyed me more than the worry had. "But I want to ask you something," I said, "and I'd like you to actually think before you answer." He said okay when you texted me yesterday morning to let me know I wasn't part of your plans. And by the way, I understand that you and Melissa need to do what works for your family. But when you did that, did it occur to you that I might make other plans? Silence. "Did it occur to you," I continued, "that I might have people in my life? That I might not spend the day sitting here waiting to see if someone found a window for me?" "Dad, I'm not angry," I said. Which was mostly true. "I'm asking a genuine question." I could hear him breathing. Then he said, "No." Honestly, no, I didn't think about it that way. I know you didn't, I said. That's why I'm asking. There was a long quiet after that. Not uncomfortable exactly. More like something settling. I think, he said slowly, I think I've been doing this thing where I assume you're just there. Like you're always going to be there and you're fine and you don't really need. He stopped. Go ahead. I don't know. I don't know what I thought. I think I stopped thinking about it, which is its own problem. That was more honest than I expected. I'll give him that. Your mother used to say, I said, that being taken for granted was the loneliest kind of being loved. He didn't say anything for a moment. I remember her saying that, he said quietly. I know. We talked for another 40 minutes. It wasn't the conversation I'd been waiting 3 years to have. I'm not sure I'd been consciously waiting for any conversation. But it was real in a way things between us hadn't been in a long time. He told me he'd felt guilty after Sandra died and hadn't known how to be around me without the guilt getting in the way. I told him that guilt is a wall you build to avoid the harder work of actually showing up. He didn't love hearing that, but he didn't argue with it either. Before we hung up, he asked if we could do Christmas properly this year. All of us, at my place or his, it didn't matter. I said I'd think about it, and I meant that too, not as a punishment, not to make him sweat. I genuinely needed to think about it, because here's something that happens when you've spent a long stretch of time being quietly managed. You start to learn the difference between what people offer when they feel guilty and what they offer when they actually mean it. And I wasn't ready to know which one this was yet. What I did know, standing in my kitchen with the leftover turkey still on the counter and Cecil's tail doing a slow wag for no particular reason, was that I felt clear. Not vindicated, not triumphant, just clear. Like a window that had been fogged over for a long time and someone had finally wiped it down. I hadn't planned any of it. I hadn't posted that photo to prove a point. I'd posted because it was a good afternoon, and Frank looked comfortable at my table, and my grandson had sauce on his chin. And it was the kind of moment Sandra would have loved, and I wanted to hold on to it somehow. But the reaction to it told me something I probably already knew. My son had an idea of what my life looked like, and it was smaller than my actual life. And somewhere along the way, I had let that happen. I had made myself smaller to fit the idea, rather than asking the idea to catch up to the reality. I am 64 years old. I have a pension and a paid-off house in a neighborhood I've lived in for 22 years. I have a daughter who shows up when I call. I have a neighbor who brings beer and doesn't need me to be anything other than what I am. I have a dog who is old and slow and follows me from room to room like I'm the most important thing in his day, which some days I think I might actually be. I also, a few weeks after all of this, had a first date, not with anyone connected to any of this story, someone I met in a watercolor class I'd signed up for in September, mostly because I needed somewhere to be on Tuesday evenings, and it was either that or the Model Train Club, and I wasn't ready for the Model Train Club. Her name is Louise. She's 61, recently retired from teaching high school English in St. Albert, and she laughed at something I said in the 3rd minute of our first conversation, and I thought, there it is. That's what this is supposed to feel like. I haven't told my son about her yet, not because I'm hiding anything, but because some things deserve to exist in their own space for a while, before they get folded into everyone else's opinions and feelings, and whatever complicated machinery gets activated in adult children when their parents turn out to still be people. I'll tell him when it's time. And the thing I want to say, the thing I keep coming back to, is that none of this happened because I was clever or strategic or trying to teach anyone a lesson. It happened because one morning I finished my coffee, turned my phone face down, and decided that my life was mine to live. Not to manage around other people's comfort, not to shrink into the corner of the frame so nobody had to adjust their picture. Sandra used to say I was stubborn. She didn't always mean it as a compliment. But I think what she was really saying was that I don't let go of things I know to be true. And I know this to be true. And I know this to be true. I am someone worth knowing. Not just someone to be tolerated when the schedule allows. It took a Thanksgiving turkey and a neighbor named Frank and a dog who follows me room to room for my son to figure that out. It took me longer than it should have to stop forgetting it myself. But we got there. That's the thing. You can lose the thread of yourself for a while and still find your way back. It just helps to have the right people at your table when you do. I've been thinking about what actually happened that Thanksgiving. Not the calls, not the texts, not the 6 missed calls from my son, but the thing underneath all of it that took me a while to name. What happened is that I stopped making myself smaller. That's it. That's the whole thing. And it sounds simple when I say it like that, but it wasn't. It had taken me the better part of 3 years to understand that I had been doing it, quietly, without noticing the way you slowly adjust the thermostat by 1 degree at a time, until one day you realize the house is cold and you can't remember when it got that way. After Sandra passed, I think I believed, without ever quite saying it to myself, that I needed to be easy, undemanding. I didn't want to be a burden on my son during his grief, on my daughter during hers, on anyone. So I made myself smaller. I asked for less. I waited to be included rather than choosing to show up. And the smaller I made myself, the easier it became for the people around me to fit me into whatever space was left over after their real plans were made. That's not anyone's fault entirely, but it's also not something I could keep doing. What I know now, and what that Thanksgiving taught me in a way I hadn't expected, is that the people in your life will take you at your own estimation. If you present yourself as someone who doesn't need much, who understands every cancellation, who is always fine, always available, always grateful for whatever corner of the calendar gets offered. That is exactly what they'll believe you are. Not because they don't love you, but because people are busy and the stories they tell about us are shaped by the evidence we give them. I gave my son evidence for years that I was fine on the margins, and he believed it because it was convenient to believe and because I never gave him reason to look closer. The photo changed that, not because I planned it to, but because it showed him a version of my life that didn't match the version he'd been carrying around. There was Frank at my table. There was my daughter's family. There was a 22-pound turkey and a dog and a grandson with salsa on his chin and a whole afternoon of the right kind of ordinary. And none of it had anything to do with whether or not my son had made room for me. That's what startled him. Not Frank specifically. The fact that I had a life he hadn't been paying attention to. And here's what I've come to understand about that. It's not a child's job to build your life for you. That's your job. The moment you outsource your sense of belonging to other people's schedules and other people's priorities, you've already lost something you can't get back by waiting for them to notice. I spent too long waiting to be noticed. Not dramatically, not consciously, just in the quiet, daily way of not calling first, not making plans first, not choosing first. Frank doesn't ask me to be anything other than what I am. Louise laughs at things I say. Cecil follows me from room to room. My daughter shows up when I call. These are not small things. These are, in fact, the whole thing. My son and I are better now. Not perfect, but honest in a way we hadn't been in a long time. That conversation happened because I stopped accommodating the distance between us and started being honest about what it had cost me. That's what I'd tell anyone in the similar place. Not to make dramatic gestures, not to teach anyone a lesson. Just stop shrinking. Stop making yourself easy to overlook. Show up for your own life, set your own table, and let the people who matter figure out where they stand. The ones worth keeping will find their way to your door.